Hello you guys, and welcome back to the Prime Vanguard channel. Today I'll be showing you guys my last Granblue deck, and that'll be my most favorite, probably budget deck that I've ever built, but not budget version of the deck. The Seven Seas deck, reintroducing Lord of the Seven Seas Nightmist and all of his shipmates. So for those of you that do not know, the Seven Seas deck was one that was introduced back into us in the G era, and it was extremely powerful for its amazing grade 1 game until it got nerfed by the ban list from Bushiroad, and now it is back in standard. The deck introduces a whole new archetype of playing along with a whole new marker of playing, featuring the new addition of the treasure marker and gaining effects based off the amount of treasure markers you have on your board. So this deck has been so much fun. It's got everything that you could possibly want it to have, and it's all thanks to this guy right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start this deck profile right off. Before I do want to let you guys know that I have two other Granblue deck profiles featuring Night Rose and then featuring Cocytus. If you want to see those deck profiles, I'm going to have them all linked down in the description below, along with the deck list for this deck as well, like I always do with my other videos. But if you want to go check out the whole Granblue series I have going on, just go ahead and watch the other videos. I'll make sure that you guys can go and do that. So without further ado, we're gonna hop right on into this deck profile at this moment. Alright you guys, so to start this deck profile off, we play 4 copies of Lord of the Seven Seas Nightmist. The OG is back, but this time not as a break ride. He is his own Vanguard with a whole clan right behind him. So Lord of the Seven Seas Nightmist has an array of effects, and he does have the staple effect that all Seven Seas units in this deck have. So let's just get right into that. So all Seven Seas units in this deck have the ability where on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, when their attack hits, you choose one of your Vanguard or Rearguard Circles without a treasure marker on it, and you get to go ahead and place a treasure marker on there. So he has a continuous ability where there are 3 skills. The first one, which is if you have 1 or more treasure marker, all of your rear guards with 7 Cs and their card names get the ability to attack from the back row as well as intercept. Strong already. Then his third ability is if you have 3 or more, during your turn all of your 7 units get plus 5,000 power. And then finally, the best skill, which is if you get to 6 or more treasure markers at the end of the battle, when he attacks, all of your 7 C's rear guards stand back up. So he does a lot, but everything he leads to is really amazing. This card has to be one of the best budget Vanguards I've seen in a very long time, considering the fact I think he's like maybe like $2-3 most. I've never seen this card more than 5. His ability, they all lead up and build into each other, so this definitely leads to an array of playstyles you can go into. You can rush hard early game so that you can get those treasure markers early, or you can play slow and get like 1 or 2 treasure markers, then finally when you go into him, get more, and as you get more treasure markers on board, you can stack the effects. As once you get to 1 or more, you're already allowing all of your units to attack from the back row and getting intercept from the back row, so therefore you're leading yourself to at least 5 attacks in a turn without too much cost being used for the effect. He leads to a lot of skills that are all amazing. Everything, this card gives you defense, this card gives you multiple attacks, it gets power, so it fixes many of the problems that this deck has for not getting power. That's what makes this clan so awesome, and having the ability to intercept from the back row makes it very versatile if you want to play Protect 1 or 2, just so that you have another marker on board to stack with your treasure markers for more power and effects. Now for our grade 2s, we play 4 copies of Seven Seas Pillager Knight Spinel. Going on to Spinel, she has the effect to get the on-hit treasure marker, and then her second ability is on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. When placed, you may counterblast 1, put 2 cards from the top of your deck into the drop zone, and call up to 1 card that's not named her in the drop zone to your Rearguard Circle. So this card's good, helps you get some early game mill, and then lets you call a unit out so you can build up your board. The one thing I will say about this deck is that unlike my Cocytus deck and my Night Rose deck, this deck doesn't really have that many superior calling abilities, as more of your abilities are active while you're on the Rearguard Circle, or they call themselves out at the cost of more units, or just gaining more advantage effects. So having 4 copies of Night Spinel to help us build up our board so that we can take advantage or get more treasure markers as possible is really helpful, and that's why you want to play 4 of her, as she's also a 7 Seas unit with the 7 Seas name. For our next grade 2, we play 4 copies of 7 Seas Master Swordsman / Shade. 7 Seas Master Swordsman / Shade, he has 2 effects, which is the on-hit ability to treasure marker, and then his second effect is during your turn, if he's on a marker, he gets 15,000 power. It's very important to note that this can be any marker, so whether it be Protect 2 or a treasure marker, he'll get the 15,000 power. This is honestly the real heavy hitter of the deck. He's the one that helps you get more power, as since we don't play Skull Dragon, we do definitely want a beat stick of the deck, and he just serves that purpose. And it's very good that he can work on Protect 2 or treasure markers, simply because this way, if we want to have a more versatile playstyle with, again, playing Protect 2, we can do that. And just having him on the marker is really helpful as well, because he can turn himself into a 15-point shield with a 24k power, or 29k power in that case. So overall, he just becomes really powerful, good shield and offense as well for the deck. To our next grade 2, we play 3 copies of Pirate Swordsman Columbar. The best grade 2 card in the game. As I've said in my other 2 videos, for those of you who do not know what Columbar does, he has the ability where on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, when he's placed, you counterblast 1, search your deck, place something into the drop zone, and call a card from your drop zone out. Essentially, this card states, hey, search your deck, put whatever you want on the board, and you can do that. And I had to make space for this card. Unfortunately, there isn't as much space for it in this deck, but I think 3 is fine, simply because you still want this card in the deck. It is the best Granblue grade 2, other than the Greed Shade that I'm about to show you. But this card is simply just helps us set up our drop zone if we need to get more pieces, as in this deck we don't really have too many forms of milling other than cards like Spinel and other grade 1s that help us get more mills in the drop zone, simply because we don't really need to stack a drop zone like that, except for cards we want to place in there to call out later, but it's not as important in this deck. For our next grade 2, we play 2 copies of Greed Shade. So unlike Columbar, this is the second best or the first best grade 2 Granblue unit that they have, whereas this one says discard a card from your hand, mill 2, and then add any card you want from your drop zone to your hand. So essentially saying, hey, search your deck, add a card to your hand, but not so much in this case as we don't have the intensive mill, but overall still very helpful. Then his first ability is just if you have 5 or more cards in your drop zone, he gets 5,000 power. Really good overall. This is just another card that helps us peak more for card advantage, as the 7 Seas units don't really do so much of that themselves, except for maybe like 2 of them. So having this card again to assist us with the milling and get the extra card search is really helpful in the deck, and that's what I wanted to have. So I had to make space for this card, as you know, because I definitely think it's one of the best grade 2s that Granblue has, and you need to be playing this in some way, shape, or form. For our last grade 2, we play 1 copy of Witch Doctor of Langor Negralazy. I was really happy to make space for this card. I just feel like the grade 0s that Granblue has right now, at least in standard, aren't as good as they are in premium. So I didn't really have too much reason to put it in Night Rose or Cocytus, just because of the way those decks work. Negralazy, for those of you that do not know, he has the ability where on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, when placed, you call a grade 0 out from your drop zone. So he's really good. He helps you set up a board if you need to for the early game, if you guard it early. But really what this card is for, it's combined with the other grade 0 that we have, which is going to be the 7 Seas Apprentice Night Runner, so that this way we can filter that card out from our drop zone to our board, so we can add more card advantage, as we're going to be using Night Runner's effect to get some more cards. And this card is completely free, doesn't cost a counterblast or anything, so if we need to use our counterblast or any other skills, we can do that. But this deck doesn't counterblast too much. I think most of your counterblasts go to your Columbar and Night Spinels anyway. So, but if we're ever in a situation where we need to do that, we can. So having Witch Doctor Langor Negralazy to specifically get Night Runner is really helpful to have, and I honestly just wanted to play 1 copy of it instead of the Nightmist, because this card just looks sick to me. To the grade 1s. So for our first grade 1, we played 3 copies of Witch Doctor of Powdered Bone Negrabone. So this is another card that we have that assists us with our superior calling, as we do more calling from the hand in this deck than we do anywhere else. So having this card, which is in the drop zone, you ditch a card from your hand to call a grade 1 out, or if you have 10 or more, you get to call any card out from your drop zone instead to the board. It is really good to have. This card will allow us to build up our board easily with some of the grade 1s, 7 Seas units that we have, mainly for most of the time, such as Resputor or Night Runner, or if we need to get something else out, then we can do that. But overall, this is just another card that helps us get more cards on the board, as he allows us to be more defensive as well, since we can just guard with it early on and stop the attack. So I'm really glad to have Negrabone in this deck, because we need it to get more calling out, so that this way we don't have to use our hand as much to superior call units or just call units to our board. For our next grade 1, we play 4 copies of Witch Doctors of the Seven Seas, Rasutor. Witch Doctor of the Seven Seas, Raster. So thanks to Raster's ability, he has the first effect, which is on hit, get a treasure marker. And then this one's second ability is, if this unit is on a marker, you can have this unit be intercept. So this is really good. Essentially, we're gonna put a treasure marker or a protect 2 marker behind, and then do what we did with that grade 1 angel feather unit and get an extra shield. So it's 20k shield on board, and that's really mainly 4. It also has the treasure marker effect, so this card will allow us, if we want to go a little grade 1 rush to get more treasure markers, we can do that, so we can have them later. Rasutor is really good simply because it's just extra shield on the board, as we are going to be calling from hand a lot, so we can't get those grade 1s back, but grade 1s like intercept while in play are really helpful as well to the strategy. For our last grade 1, we have the bad boy, the drama, the star of the grade 1s, Seven Seas Helmsman Nightcrow. Seven Seas Helmsman Nightcrow, in case you're wondering, this was the card on the premium ban list. I don't really play premium, so somebody tell me, like, is this card banned in premium? Not banned, but it's like limited to 1 to my knowledge. Is this card also limited to 1? But that's a whole nother story. So we're gonna hop right into his effect. He has the first effect where when it attacks, you get a treasure marker, but his other abilities from the drop zone, if you have a Vanguard with 7 Cs in its card name, you Soul Blast 1, retire rear guard, not him, and then you get to call this card out. Essentially letting us recycle our units from the board to the drop zone if we need to superior call them back out to activate effects, or if we want to call cards from our hand to get more units back on board for just giving up 1. If we have anything specific in the soil we want to get rid of as well, we can use his Soul Blast obviously to do so, as he'll just call himself right back. There's never really been a time where if I got desperate I had to call triggers. And if I ever did do that, I think like I must have been in a really bad situation, because I would never call triggers out to call a unit out. That is just wasting shield. But this card helps us build back our board for getting rid of our bad units or units that we may or may not need to do so. Or if we want to play a bit of like a grade 1 rush strategy, even with this card the way it is right now in standard, that still works out really well, as we can just get rid of the units that we don't need and exchange them out for a unit that can allow us to get a treasure marker. So Seven Seas Helmsman Nightcrow, still extremely powerful. Maybe not as powerful as his premium form, but this card is still really amazing and key to our early game strategy. And I know this is a little early, but there is one other card that I'm going to go ahead and show, since I'm not going to show with my starter. But we play 4 copies of Seven Seas Apprentice Nightrunner. I'm playing 4 of the grade, it's a grade 0. Yes, it is, not a grade 1. So just to let you guys know, this is the card that we want to be calling out with Negro Lazy. But he has 2 effects. The first effect, which is the on hit get a treasure marker, and then his second ability, which is act on the rearguard circle. You bind this card, put 2 cards from the top of your deck into the drop zone, and then take 1 card with 7 Cs in its name, except him of course, and add it to your hand. So this is the card that we're going to be using a lot to help us get our card advantage, filter more cards out from our deck as Greed Shade. Essentially, since we're playing less of that, this is a Greed Shade for 7 Cs as a grade 0 form. This card really is good with our 7 Cs assistance, as it helps us mill and helps us give card advantage. You can easily get this card back with Negro Lazy and recycle it, or if you guard with it early from hand, you can use that to block attacks as well. So yeah, this card is just really good in getting us card advantage, and that's the main purpose of it. It's essentially more Greed Shades for the deck, as we are only playing 2 copies of Greed Shade, and you guys already know how I feel about Greed Shade, so obviously I think that this card is really amazing for its specific archetype. And now for our triggers. So my trigger lineup with this deck is a little bit different than my other trigger lineups from my other Granblue decks. In this deck we play 4 copies of Rough Seas Banshee, 4 copies of Night Spirit, 4 copies of Gust Jin, and 4 copies of Rick the Ghosty. So I'm actually really excited to finally play a deck where Gustion is not useless. Only because I kind of missed seeing Draw Trigger Sentinel in this deck. But this deck, unlike I said guys, with my Cocytus deck and my Night Rose deck, can't get the fat hand like the other ones can, as Cocytus was able to build up all of his resources during the main phase because of the mass superior milling and superior calling he does, and Night Rose builds up most of her resources during the battle phase, as you can choose on if you want to go more card advantage or more heavy attacks with the Skull Dragons. But this deck doesn't have that. This deck's power really comes from its multiple attacking and defensing from getting the treasure markers. So having more draw triggers into the deck is definitely helpful than having crits, because there aren't really too many big beat sticks in this deck, unlike Cocytus and Night Rose, who rely on Skull Dragon be the heavy hitters. Except we only have Slash Shade, but Slash Shade, although it can get to like 24, Protect 2, 29, and then Nightmist 34, yeah, that's just not, that's big, but not as big as we would like to have in our other decks. So having the draw triggers to help us get more card advantage is fine. I've seen some 7Cs decks that will go straight like 8 draw. I feel like that's unnecessary. I mean, yes, the deck can essentially get to from my experience, like 9 to 10 attacks, because you're essentially going to have everything attacked from the back row and you have 5 rear guards. So although that's the case, I don't feel like it's necessary to play all those draw triggers to get more card advantage. I think that the way that I have the deck is fine. It's worked out perfectly for me. If you want to go 4 of this, then 2 copies of the draw trigger, that's perfectly fine. But for me, like, I've always been the theme of like, okay, I want to kill my opponent as quickly as possible. I don't want to go back and forth as much, especially when I'm playing this deck on a competitive level, or trying to make all my decks on a competitive level, no matter what it is. So I just feel like this is fine for me. I think that if anything, like, I need to do some more play testing, as I haven't really gotten too much experience against the Luar decks that have been coming out, and the Aquaforce deck at the timing of this video comes out next week, so I have to play test against that. But yeah, I'm comfortable with this trigger lineup, so this is what I'm rocking with. I'm playing Rick the Ghosty only in this deck, simply because it's 7Cs, you know, like I want to stick with all the OGs, and Rick the Ghosty, oh, she's ugly, but she saved me a few times, and it helps. Heal triggers are good, so it helps in this deck. It's fine. And then for my starter, in this deck I'm also playing Captain Night Kid. I just feel like, again, Night Kid's an OG, he fits the theme of the deck, so why not play him? Alright you guys, so before we go, I want to do a few talking points and a quick little thing I want to go over. The one thing I want to note about this deck is that this is a really fun deck. This deck can honestly be combo, it can be hardcore combo, it can be a snowball deck, the way that this deck just plays out. And the cool thing about this deck is that out of all the decks, like in the game, just being honest, this deck takes advantage of Protect 2 the best from my experience, because now that we're playing Gustion again in the deck, which is our Sentinel Perfect Guard, we can use Protect 2 and combine them with our back row units, since everybody can attack from the back row or intercept from the back row and really get those hard-hitting attacks. Like I said, unlike in my Cocytus deck and my Night Rose deck, this deck doesn't really have like hard hitters, as you get more of like the small stuff, you know, the superior calling, the card advantage, the little gimmicks that you get off to make your card advantage and your attacks better. But Protect 2 definitely is the way that I've been going with this deck. There hasn't been too many decks that make me regret that decision, as now that like I said, now that you're playing the Sentinel Draw Trigger, you don't have to worry about not being able to Perfect Guard an attack or throwing a lot of your cards in hand with the critical Sentinel to do so. So overall, I think that Protect 2, if you guys want my opinion on it, is the way to go with 7Cs, just from my experience. But that is all with this deck profile, guys. Thank you so much for staying with me through it. If you guys enjoyed this deck profile, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. I have plenty of content coming out soon. I just want to say that this deck is really fun to play. I had a lot of fun with this deck. This is, in my opinion, one of the best budget decks currently out in the game right now, just essentially being so cheap. I think, like, honestly, if I wasn't playing Colombard and Greedshade in this deck, which I think like Greedshade had a reprint, I don't know, I know somebody had a reprint, but if I wasn't playing Colombard and Greedshade, they're cheaper substitutes. You can just go ahead and play Nightmist and then go ahead and throw Skeleton Sea Navigator in the deck if you want to get more aggressive milling, just to essentially make up for not having the Colombard and the Greed Shade. So it's cheap fixes like that. But if your friend's thinking about building a deck and they're on a budget, then I would definitely say go ahead and share this video with them. Again, all my decks are a guideline to any future decks that come out. This is just a combination of reading some Japanese deck lists, my personal play testing and experience with the deck, and so forth and so far on. But again, that is all, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I am Prime Vanguard, and I am officially heading out. So I'll see y'all later.